Hey everybody, Glenn Hess from Hess Motorsports here. We're going to go over the disassembly and reassembling the YXZ 1000R Yamaha with a 2-to-1 steering quickener. All right, first thing you're going to do after you've got your steering wheel centered, actually I explained a while ago to make sure that it is centered, and it actually got turned a little bit when I got out of the car, so make sure it's back straight. First thing you do is these little factory Yamaha push-ins are designed to thread out real gently with a flat screwdriver, and then you can get behind them and after they thread out and pop them out. They'll come out, they're reusable, don't throw them away. This one and everything else I'll do from setting in the driver's seat. All right, after we had all the steering clips out of the little housing piece here, you can tilt your wheel down a little bit and it unclips from back here. It's kind of just a little wiggle and it'll pop out. Put a little pressure on it. Sometimes it can be a little bit contrary, but not too bad. There, it popped out. This side, pull up on it a little bit, same thing. There, it popped off. Put that over to the side, you're gonna need that later. Then I'm gonna put the steering wheel back up a little bit. Next thing I'm gonna do is take the center cap off, and it's kind of hook your fingers behind it. You're right behind this edge here, top and bottom, and pop it off. Put it where you don't need it. Next thing you're gonna need is a 17mm socket. All right, take your 17mm socket, put your knees against the steering wheel to hold it from turning, break the nut loose. It is a locking style nut, so it's gonna run a little bit hard the whole while. Take it off. You have a nut with a flat washer. As soon as I get it all the way off, take it. Don't disregard it, put it with your other bolts and stuff. Come out of there. There it is. And then usually you can go, and sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. Get a pull on it pretty hard and it'll pop loose. Might take a couple of, but you put your knees against the bottom and pull on top, or your buddy's got to hit it for you. And that's really the only time you need 2 people. So you can't do it by yourself unless you have a puller. Need your 10mm ratchet set up on a 1/4-inch drive. And you got to pull this bolt off. A 10mm bolt over here. We're taking the bottom cover off so we can get to everything. You can use power tools if you want to, but not everybody has them, so I figured I'd show it the old-fashioned way. Got a bolt on this side. Make sure your key's in the off position. Pull the ignition key out, set it to the side so you don't lose it. Get a crescent wrench and get on your nut here and break it loose. It's plastic, don't get rough with it. Thread it off, take it off by hand. Then you can push that to the inside. Now I've got 1 bolt left here in my cover. I took the other ones off earlier, the 2 side bolts. Just take it off. Now the cover you have to pull the lever forward towards you. There, your cover's off. Now that you've got the cover off, you want to get the 10mm bolts here that hold the gauge cluster. Works easiest with a ratchet and a socket. You can get away from the work a little bit, just thread them out. And if you want to use power tools, you can, but not everybody's got them. And then the other one is right here. Those bolts are both out of the way. Just take the cluster and just kind of set it back. Be careful with it. Next thing you're going to need will be the small Allen. Take this off. Take your reverse lever off. Take those little bolts out. There's 2 of them. They're small. Be careful so you don't lose them. Just take your reverse cable and just set it over here to the side. Hang it on that. It's out of the way. The next thing you're going to need, you want to break loose the 12mm here. Before you take those out, I recommend to break loose the Allens that hold the whole housing, big one. Thread them out. The bottom ones won't come out until you remove the bolts, but I like to get them broke loose. That way the unit's held firmly in place. Then you go back and take these out. All right, after you take your last bolt out, slide the housing off. Your new Hess housing will come. As you can see, we have a shaft in here that'll slip back on here. We have a bearing housing here that holds the shaft in line so there can be no deflection, and all your 2-to-1 gearing and stuff is in here. This is very important that when you're installing this, if it has a little resistance or something, you do not beat on the end of the shaft. If you do, you're going to damage the internals in here and you're going to have problems. It's not going to move freely or anything. So you get it lined up. You might have to wiggle it around a little bit to get it to go. And that's falling in my way. As you see, I pushed here and it went all the way up. And it should bottom out perfectly against it when it's all the way on. Then you just go back with your Allen bolts. Get them started in place. You'll have to wiggle a little bit. You can just kind of start them. Everything works good to start everything before you tighten anything up. Tighten the bolts up here on the housing. You can just kind of snug them from now. If you'll move this around with one hand, you can start these bolts pretty easy with the other. Otherwise, it's kind of fighting you. Get all 4 of them started. There's a little bit of play in the unit, but not much. You just kind of center it up and snug them down. Now go back and make sure your housing bolts are all the way tight, since it can. Okay, well, next thing that we want to do is, as you notice, as my car's been driven a little bit, I've got dirt and mud built up here. This is just occurs from running off the gauges and stuff. You can see that it would just accumulate, get in up behind the housing. We don't want to let that mud and dirt get down into here, since we have gears and grease and stuff in here now. So we're going to just put a little bit of silicone in this little weep hole here, just to kind of seal it off. We don't want this dirt and mud getting in the housing, since there's grease and gears in there now. If you notice on the original housing, there's a drain hole on the bottom, and then this housing has the hole on the top of it. We chose not to put a drain hole in the bottom of ours because we didn't really want water or grease or dirt getting in there, since this is gears and stuff in here that have to have grease to operate. So that's why the bottom of our unit doesn't have this slot, and there's no slot or nothing on the top, so you need to just silicone that top. This is a close enough fit that it's not going to really leak or give any problems. All right, the next part we're going to put on is put back your gauge cluster back on top. If you notice, it fits and lines up perfectly. Just take your 10mm headed bolts with your 6mm thread and get them started. There's one on each side. And I can't seem to get it started, but Sometimes it works better to just have there it goes. Just we got too much thumbs. Run both bolts up before you tighten either one of them. Tighten those up. The next thing I'm going to do is put the reverse lever back in place. As you notice, we had to notch and have room for it to work. We'll need the other Allen, smaller Allen set up. I prefer the longer ones here because you can get away from your work a little bit better. But you can do it with sockets or whatever works, or whatever you have handy. And you may prefer to put the lever on before the gauge cluster. It might be easier if you're working with a short Allen setup. Put it in place. It really doesn't have any movement or any adjustment. Snug it up. Run the other bolt down too. Snug it up. Make sure they're both tight. And as you're going along, everything should be good. The next item to put on will be the lower cover, and it's a little bit more challenging to get on than it was before because you have to put it right here, and then you have to pull the reverse lever out and then kind of twist it past. Then you need to get your ignition switch back up here, stick it through the hole. It has a slot on it. You got to line it up with the slot. When it pops in the slot, you won't be able to turn it by hand. Take your ignition nut, run it back on. Crazy with it, but that's about all it really needs. You put your key back in so you don't lose that sucker. Can't have any fun without a key. Now you're going to bolt your cover down. You got a center bolt right here. That'll bolt right back up where it was. As you notice, we made our unit fit the shape here to make it look fit for the fit and trim finish to look good. You have one bolt down under the side over here. A little bit difficult to start sometimes just because of the angle. They start by hand pretty easy. As you notice, my bolts look like they could be a little worn. Maybe because this has been on and off a whole lot of times in making video and test fitting parts and stuff. Next, I'm going to install the top cover, and it's pretty simple. Slide it down over it, kind of squeeze together here. You'll hear it snap. Over here, it just kind of snaps in place. Take your little factory rivets, push them in. Don't forget the one in the back that you can't see. Kind of got to feel around for it, wiggle it. Now they're all back together there. The next thing will be your steering wheel. And my suggestion to make sure that you get your wheel right is try to have your wheel straight when you take the steering wheel off. But don't actually put all this on, but don't actually tighten it up tight until you actually go make just a little bit of a drive, because it's pretty easy to be off one notch. Steering wheel on kind of light. Started the washer of the nut, and I'm going to just run it on till I've got some slack out of it. I don't want to seat it down yet, but I don't want it to come off on me either. You can just go drive it just a little bit and see if your wheel's straight. If not, just pull it back off and move it one notch to where it's straight when you're driving straight. Now, as you can see, everything fits nice and finished. We made this large to take up the gap that the steering wheel used to do. Got a little Hess logo there. And if you don't feel qualified to install this, please try to find somebody that can help you, or if you need a call, I'll be glad to try to walk you through a couple things if you got some questions. Hope this video helps you out. Thanks for using Hess Motorsports parts. Sean and I and all the guys here at the shop, Blake and Chris, we really appreciate it. Thank you.